Imagine for a second waking up in a world where the moral compass is just completely flipped, like up is down, right is wrong.
Yeah.
Traditional allies are suddenly viewed as the ultimate villains, and the very concept of, objective truth has basically been erased.
It sounds like science fiction, honestly.
Yeah.
But that's exactly what we're looking at today.
Right, and deciphering that flipped reality is our mission for this deep dive. Today, we're unpacking a really provocative and honestly urgent perspective on global stability and cultural decline.
And we're basing this on a recent, really extensive interview with the British commentator and author Melanie Phillips.
Right, she was on the Brendan O'Neill show.
Exactly. And she discusses the current geopolitical war with Iran and what she calls a terrifying moral inversion happening right now in Western society.
Now, before we really get into the weeds here, I need to take a second to speak directly to you, the listener.
Yeah, this is important.
Phillips touches on some highly, highly charged political topics here. I mean, she is heavily criticizing both the political left and factions of the right.
Nobody is spared, really.
Exactly. So I want to make it crystal clear. As analysts, we're absolutely not taking sides here. We're not endorsing these viewpoints, and we're not condemning them either.
Our goal is strictly to impartially analyze her arguments, right? To understand her framework regarding the really high stakes for Western civilization.
Exactly. So let's start with the immediate physical conflict, the geopolitical showdown, because Phillips argues this is the catalyst for the whole crisis.
Right. She starts by looking at the military actions taken by the U.S., specifically under Trump, and by Israel.
And the way it's framed in the media. Right.
Exactly. The media often frames these strikes as, sudden acts of wanton aggression, like they just happened out of the blue.
But she says that's completely wrong.
Right. Phillips asserts that these aren't sudden escalations. They are a much-delayed response to a war that has been going on for 47 years.
47 years. So she's tracing this all the way back to 1979.
Yes, to when the Islamic regime took power in Tehran. Her argument is that the West hasn't been the aggressor. They've basically been absorbing blows terrorism proxy militias for almost half a century.
Okay, but why now? Like, why is it all coming to a head so aggressively right now?
Well, it's the ticking clock. The window to act was closing.
Because of the nukes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Iran was rapidly advancing toward nuclear weapons while simultaneously, and this is key, assembling an arsenal of intercontinental ballistic missiles.
ICBMs that could actually reach America and Europe.
Right. So the West had this, as she calls it, vanishingly small window to act before the regime just became untouchable.
Okay, let me jump in with an analogy here just to sort of clarify Iran's role in all this. Because it's not just Iran acting alone, right?
No, not at all.
It's like, imagine a stone bridge, and Iran is the keystone. Phillips describes them as the fulcrum of an axis of evil that props up Russia, China, and North Korea.
This is a great way to look at it. They're the logistics hub.
Right, so if you pull out that keystone, the whole network of adversaries starts to fracture, which explains the objective.
Yeah, the immediate goal for the U.S. and Israel isn't necessarily, a rapid regime change or building a democracy overnight. It's about defanging Iran.
Defanging them, so taking away their military threat.
Exactly. Systematically degrading their capabilities so they can't pose that massive military threat anymore. But Phillips gives a huge warning here.
What?
If America and its allies stop prematurely, if they fail to fully defang the regime, the humiliation would be catastrophic for the free world. Iran would just declare victory and rebuild.
Man. Okay, so those are the literal physical stakes. But we need to transition from the physical battlefield to the ideological battlefield at home.
Right, the home front.
Because according to Phillips, the West's reaction to this conflict is just completely baffling. This is where she brings in that concept of moral inversion, right?
Yes, moral inversion. It's this observation that Western media, commentators, public institutions, they consistently seem to take the side of the bad people.
Over the people actually trying to defend civilization.
Exactly. You see it in the media framing. The second any action is taken against Iran or its proxies, the media goes apocalyptic.
Oh, like World War III is starting, or America is provoking a wider war.
Right, or this dominant leftist narrative that the war is entirely unprovoked.
Which, I mean, to use the word unprovoked, you basically have to completely ignore that 47-year history we just talked about.
Completely ignore it. And you have to ignore the October 7th attacks by Hamas and Hezbollah's daily rockets, both of which are proxies funded by Iran.
Okay, so I have to push back here, or at least ask the obvious question, why? Why would Western institutions and citizens actively root against their own geopolitical interests? Like, what drives a highly educated society to cheer for forces that want to destroy it?
Well, according to Phillips, this isn't some sudden weird phenomenon. It's the result of about a half-century of Western education.
Oh, interesting. So it starts in the schools.
Mostly the universities, yeah. For generations, the education system has been teaching that the West is inherently evil, inherently racist, and colonialist.
So if you're raised to believe your own foundation is completely rotten, you'll naturally side with anyone trying to tear it down.
Exactly. But it goes deeper than just feeling guilty. The most profound philosophical point she makes is about truth. She argues that universities literally abolished the idea of objective truth
Wait, abolished it? How do you abolish truth?
by replacing it with subjective reality. If there's no objective truth, then logically there are no lies. Everything just becomes this anarchy of opinion.
Ah, I see.
And without that shared truth, reason dies. And when reason dies, society loses all its moral guardrails.
It's like, imagine trying to navigate a ship, right? But the captain and the crew have decided that the concept of north is just like an opinion.
That's exactly it.
You don't have a shared compass anymore. The ship is guaranteed to crash into the rocks.
And we are seeing the crash happening in real time. Phillips gives some very specific case studies from the media coverage of the Gaza war to show this embrace of lies.
Right, let's talk about those, because they're pretty shocking.
Yeah, so she points out how major media, the BBC, the New York Times, the Guardian, along with huge NGOs and the UN, perpetuated this narrative of an intentional catastrophic famine in Gaza.
But the objective data showed otherwise.
Right, the data showed thousands of aid trucks entering, but the narrative of an engineered famine was just pushed relentlessly anyway.
Because the factual accuracy mattered less than the narrative that the West's ally is evil.
Exactly. And she points to casualty numbers as another example. The entire globe just accepted these unverified casualty figures from the Hamas-run health ministry.
Right, numbers that famously didn't distinguish between civilians and armed combatants.
Exactly. But when military analysts actually looked at the data, factoring in the combatants, they found Israel achieved a historically low civilian-to-combatant casualty ratio.
Like 1-to-1 or maybe 2-to-1, right? Which, for context, the global average for urban warfare, like what we saw in Iraq or Afghanistan, is usually 9 civilians killed for every 1 combatant.
9-to-1.
Wow.
But despite achieving a 1.1 or 2.1 ratio in incredibly dense urban combat, they were universally portrayed as committing wanton slaughter. Because in a post-truth world, empirical data just bounces off an established narrative.
Okay, so if we've lost objective truth and we have this historical guilt, how does this actually manifest politically right now? Because Phillips says this creates some really bizarre political alliances, right?
It creates incredibly strange, unholy alliances, and it normalizes very specific ancient hatreds.
Right.
Namely the explosive resurgence of anti-Semitism.
Now, she specifically talks about anti-Zionism here, which is a term we hear constantly.
Right, and she argues that modern anti-Zionism is structurally identical to anti-Semitism.
How so? Because a lot of people claim it's just a political critique of a foreign government.
Well, she defines Zionism simply as the right to self-determination for the Jewish people in their historical homeland. So anti-Zionism singles out the Jewish state, treating it unlike literally any other country on earth, with unbridled malice.
It applies a standard of purity that nobody else is held to.
Exactly. And this shared hatred leads to what she calls the Islamo-left alliance.
Oh, okay, yes, the unholy marriage. I wanted to get to this.
It's fascinating. You see secular, progressive politicians. She mentions Green Party figures in the UK, like Hannah Spencer, aligning with strict Islamists.
And this is where my brain just kind of short circuits. Because how does a progressive group whose core values are, women's liberation, LGBTQ+ rights, how do they ally with religious fundamentalists who fundamentally oppose all of those things?
It seems crazy, but Phillips says they are united by 2 things: a shared desire to bring down Western civilization and a shared hatred of Israel. That's it. That's enough to bond them.
Wow, the ultimate enemy of my enemy is my friend. But okay, to maintain our impartial lens here, we have to flip the script, because Phillips does not let the political right off the hook.
Oh, not at all. She heavily critiques what she calls the crank right.
Right, the Magie isolationists in the U.S. She specifically mentions people like Tucker Carlson and J.D. Vance.
Yeah. And her analysis of them is actually pretty nuanced. She acknowledges that these factions are feeling a very real, justified pain.
Because they feel like they're losing their traditional culture and their nation.
Exactly. They are grieving the loss of their historic way of life to rapid globalization.
So she validates the grievance.
She validates the grievance, but she harshly condemns who they are blaming for it.
Mm.
She argues they have wrongly and dangerously scapegoated Jews as the architects of this cultural loss.
Oh, I see. So instead of analyzing complex, sociological shifts or the actual academic deconstructionism that started in mostly non-Jewish elite universities.
They just rely on old-fashioned anti-Semitic tropes, the idea of the globalist manipulator.
Which is incredibly lazy intellectually speaking.
It is. And she warns that by adopting these old bigotries, this faction of the right is threatening to completely destroy the conservative movement. They become totally morally useless.
Right, because if you abandon objective truth and rely on racial scapegoating, you're not a moral alternative to the radical left. You're just a different flavor of the exact same post-truth problem.
Exactly. It's a tragic symmetry between the extremes.
Okay, we've covered a ton of ground here. Let's pull this all together and summarize the stakes, because the warning Phillips is issuing is massive.
It really is. It all circles back to that first point, Iran.
Right.
She argues that defanging Iran could replace this global corridor of poison, the axis of evil, with a corridor of goodness, a stable alliance stretching from India through Israel directly to the West.
Which sounds great, but there's a huge but here.
The biggest but. Winning that physical war overseas means absolutely nothing if the West continues to suffer from internal moral collapse.
If the fortress crumbles from the inside. And I think this is exactly why this matters to you, the listener. Because whether you agree with Melanie Phillips on every single point or you completely disagree with her, these dynamics are happening around us.
Absolutely.
The shifting definitions of truth, the rewriting of history, these wild political alliances forming in your own local elections, it directly impacts the stability of the society you live in.
You can't just ignore it.
No, you can't. Which brings us to a final sort of provocative thought to leave you with. Building on this whole idea of the death of objective truth,
Yeah.
if a society's survival really depends on a shared understanding of objective facts, what happens when we factor in the internet?
Oh, man. The algorithms.
Right. We live in this highly fragmented, algorithm-driven age. Every time you open your phone, you are being fed a customized reality designed to confirm your biases and keep you engaged.
Don't keep you angry.
Exactly. So the question is, does this technology make it fundamentally impossible to ever rebuild a consensus on what is real? In a world where division is literally a business model, how do we ever find our way back to a shared reality?
That is the million-dollar question.
It really is. Something to mull over the next time you're scrolling through your feed.